Good evening, everybody. 5:02. Thanks for being at the City of Everett Built Environment Council Committee of March 13th, 2024, right here in the Everett City Council chambers. And I'm Councilmember Vogely. We have Councilmember Bader and Councilmember Zarlingo and other people that will tell who they are when their time comes up. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. There will be no public comment during committee meetings, and you can watch remotely, and I'm not going to read that line. If you don't like that, please let me know, and I will read it later. I'm talking to the people out there in the public. I will say all of the agenda items and then we'll start. So first we'll do Park District briefing and discussion, and then Everett Mall Way streetscape discussion, electric bikes and scooter policy discussion, and then our next meeting agenda topics, and we're going to cover all of that in 56 minutes. No, 42 minutes. We'll see. So I think first we have York Stevens Wajda to talk about the Park District briefing.
Good afternoon. Yes, York Stevens Wajda, Planning Director. Just wanted to give as many opportunities for the council to get acquainted to this project as possible. We have exited the Planning Commission phase. It was last Tuesday, I believe, so about 9 days ago. The Planning Commission completed a two-part, maybe 4-hour public hearing and deliberation session. 6, was it? Okay. And then there were other meetings before that, so all told, they definitely got their hands very much into this project. As always, we benefit immensely from the perspective, from the questions, tough questions, easy questions, and everything in between. I think it only benefits projects like this. So I wanted to give you an update on that. It's out of the Planning Commission. The recommendation from the Planning Commission, and they reviewed only, I guess as a reminder, we're dealing with 4 aspects here: a comprehensive plan amendment, a plan development overlay, a development agreement, and a street vacation. I've been saying 4 ordinances the whole time, and now I just said 4 components. I think we're going to combine the plan development overlay and the development agreement into a single ordinance. So still the same 4 pieces, maybe saving a little bit of paper by combining those 2 into one ordinance. The Planning Commission only reviewed the plan development overlay and the comprehensive plan amendment. The street vacation and the development agreement are council purview, although we definitely talked about those as context and went through those. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the plan development overlay. They added one statement, which I think bears repeating because it was the outcome of a whole lot of work, and it was a point of discussion at many points in this project, and will be a point of discussion surely with the council as well. That statement was, the Planning Commission recognizes that the capital facilities and utilities element of the forthcoming comprehensive plan update must recognize and address the off-site infrastructure demands, such as those at Wiggums Hollow Park and sidewalk improvements on 15th that are generated by this project. 2 kind of parts to that jump out to me. One is recognizing some of the public comments and other concerns that have come up around infrastructure nearby, and this development would add 1,500 dwelling units, and that'd be about 3,000 and change new residents, and that's new demand for walking paths to Broadway and the bus stops there. Will include some additional traffic in the neighborhood, more use for the Wiggums Hollow Park next door, even though this development is going to have active recreation and park space within it as well. Nonetheless, we would expect some more use of Wiggums Hollow. So a lot of discussion happened around those infrastructure needs. Some of these could be characterized as existing deficiencies. Some of these could be responding to new demands from the development. So that's one piece of them, so picking up on what the neighborhood has been asking for in their comments and engagement with the Planning Commission. And then the other piece is recognizing the comprehensive plan as an appropriate vehicle for tackling some of those. We're in the midst of a comprehensive plan periodic update, and as I told the Planning Commission, as soon as we get through Park District, which has taken up a chunk of bandwidth in the planning department these days, the Planning Commission and then the council will hear a lot more about the comprehensive plan update. It's how we balance and set policy for a lot of these kind of infrastructure, capital facilities, and financing needs. So I've said all along that that's a great place for folks in the neighborhood to engage and a great vehicle for them to engage on everything that makes a great and livable neighborhood. So I wanted to pass that along, mention the schedule, and then kind of turn to see if there are questions or areas that that we could spend our effort today and staff could spend their effort before the briefing. The briefing is scheduled for March 27th with the City Council, 2 weeks-ish from today. No, 2 weeks exactly from today. And then on April 3rd, we would have a second reading, which is normally just a formality, but we would schedule a public hearing as well for that day. As far as I know, the public hearing can be scheduled at any one of the 3 normal council meetings. So we were looking to spend the first day on a briefing and questions and discussions. The second time we come would be the public hearing and have a little bit of that audience and public participation. And then we have one more built environment committee that we could use to answer questions or continue to discuss. That's on April 10th, a month from now. And then April 17th would be continued public hearing and deliberations, assuming that you would want to keep public hearing open until the end, although you could also close it on the 3rd, and then potentially a decision by the council on that April 17th. There is at least one float city council full meeting in there as well, should you want to take 6 hours of discussion with this one. I assume you both benefit from the work that the Planning Commission has done, as well as have a lot of other things on your plate, so we anticipate a little bit less. So that's kind of my update and plan of action here. You've heard a couple of briefings on the project, many briefings on the project, especially in this committee. Councilmember Baders has not had the benefit of quite so many briefings on it, so maybe an opportunity for some questions there. And most important for us is if this schedule looks reasonable, and of course you have other council colleagues who we would want that input from, and what sort of information. There's a whole lot of information, a stack about this big between the draft environmental impact statement and final environmental impact statement and memos and all of that. Is there anything missing? Is there anything that we could clarify? And other than that, what questions might you have?
Fantastic. I have not yet been able to talk with Delta neighborhood representatives or EHA representative that have both reached out to me, and I know also y'all too. Maybe you've met with them. There was a meeting going on with not me earlier today. So I can just remember some of the questions and concerns that have come from previous discussions. And I don't know that I have more different ones. You two?
I think I have some
Mike?
first impression. I definitely have some, I think, to try to familiarize myself better, York, with this. And it may be somewhat general, so I apologize for that. But I guess the first thing that, for lack of a better term, surprises me a little bit about this project is the density over 4 blocks away from Broadway, from a major bus line. Usually when we, at least from my recollection, when we get very dense projects, we're trying to get them where high capacity, kind of however you define high capacity transit is. So that's one surprising element to me of this, as to how this ended up not considering that factor, or how that fits in with that. So, and does the Planning Commission talk about that? Did that?
A little bit, yeah. For this development is rooted in the location of Baker Heights, and so that's the area that has, and I've got a Planning Commission memo from 20 years ago in April when EHA first started working with the city on what the future of Baker Heights would be. And so 20 years worth has brought us to where we are today. I consider it, well, for one, there is a bus stop on the site, the 29, I think it is, and as part of the rebuilt or expanded Poplar, there will be a rebuilt bus stop that has local bus service connecting to downtown and to the College Station. Broadway has more bus service, and they have a bus rapid transit line that is coming. Would expect to have a stop probably at 14th, I believe it is. Most directly serving the hospital, but also very well positioned to serve Park District. High frequency, long span of service, yes.
Is that the orange line or is that an ET?
Gold.
Gold.
Yeah, orange is the one that's opening up Linwood, Mill Creek-ish at the end of the month. So this is gold.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So it's a Swift,
It's a Swift, so yes.
not a,
yeah.
it's a blue, not a red. Nothing,
Right,
sorry.
yes, community transit, Swift bus, yes. There's also a blue line, but yeah, so the gold line is gonna connect from the Marysville, Arlington, Cascade Industrial Center at the farthest end of the north through downtown Marysville, through Everett, and currently into downtown Everett. You'll hear more about that pretty soon. I think Community Transit is working on initial designs and seeking federal funding, and I think they're going to take that public pretty soon. But it's long been in their long-range plan and would be in place, I think, within 10 years, let's say, although I'm not sure about that. So a big expansion of transit service, pretty short walk from Baker Heights to Broadway. In terms of not being on the arterial itself, I would consider that a little bit of a feature rather than a bug, because arterials are not the most pleasant places to live on or to, for the park purpose or for the coffee shops and the outdoor civic space and all of that to kind of recreate on. Pollution, hopefully getting better with electric vehicles, but there's been a lot of concern about a lot of the high-density housing right on heavily trafficked arterials that's been kind of emerging in the planning world in recent years. It does put you closer to quieter streets than busier streets with a concentration of people. But on the other hand, it's all housing too. So they're where I think commerce and industry really needs separation from other housing. In this case, everybody's going to be going home and going to bed at 8 o'clock or something like that. Well,
Let's hope not. I mean, Hewitt's starting to be a little bit bustling. Let's stay up a little bit past 8.
yes.
This is somewhat vague in York. This was, I think, before your time, and I never paid much attention to it because it never really gelled. But at one time, I thought there was a proposal for a swapper that Wazoo Everett was looking at this property. What can you tell us what happened, or tell me what happened to that proposal? Why that? It seemed like there's such synergy there,
Right.
Given that Wazoo was so close in the College District that we'd kind of trumpeted.
I don't know what happened, but they were unable to agree to terms, I think. Jennifer,
Yeah, I
you
think
heard
that's
anything
all,
more?
yeah, I've heard, EHA talk about it, I've heard folks from the college talk about it, but not any more detail than just something about it didn't work out.
Yeah, over the 20 years, there have been a couple different iterations from remodel and keep Baker Heights to rebuild something similar to the sale to Wazoo, to other types of sales to developers, to a more medium-sized version of this, to the version that we have today. I think I can count at least 6 or 7 complete proposals that I've seen over those years.
And I think the final question I've got for now, as we follow this through, is my understanding is some of this will be, for lack of a better term, subsidized housing or supported housing. Not supportive, subsidized, right? I don't want to screw up my terms here. But some of it is kind of vaguely defined as market rate, what have you. I've been concerned about, is there really the demand for that? I mean, we don't see the scale of buildings they're proposing here in downtown Everett, which you think would be a more attractive market for it, or over by the transit center, at this point at least. I'm concerned that there's the demand for that, and that we'll be 5, 10 years down the road and EHL come to us and go, oh, sorry, market rate didn't work out. We want to turn it all into subsidized housing. Any thoughts or?
Yeah, I think so. What the economic segment of the rents is going to be is a complicated one, and Jason Morrow, the director of real estate for EHA, is the best one to answer that. But I'll channel a little bit of what I heard at the Planning Commission and at the Planning Commission of his explanations there. The best term that I've heard, and I get tripped up on these too, I've heard market rate, mixed income, workforce, essential housing. The one that resonated the most to me in terms of explaining it is cost rent. And that was a new one that came out at the last meeting as he continues to get these questions, rightfully so. It's an important part of the project. That, as I understand it, 139, and I hope I get that number right, but it's roughly 139 units are the rest of the replacement of Baker Heights housing units. The rest were in Madrona Square, I think, what makes the balance of that, of the 244 that were there. Those will remain income qualified and subsidized and rent restricted to, I think, 60% area median income or something. So roughly equivalent to what Baker Heights units would be. The balance, around 1,350 units, would depend on the life cycle of the development. So the financing that EHA has explained using is going to be at a good rate, debt equity from private capital markets with a very good bond rating. And I hope I got all of those technical terms correct. As they pay down that debt and free up more of their resources, they will try to reduce and keep the rents, downward pressure on the rents over time. EHA looks at their entire portfolio as serving a housing need at different price points. So of course, a lot of it is subsidized and deeply affordable, or it's vouchers. Here they would try to serve a couple of needs. We have housing target for different economic segments, and half of the 39,000 housing units that we need to plan for in the comprehensive plan, 19 park districts worth, half of that is above median income, and the other half runs the gamut from permanent supportive housing and shelter beds up to 80% area median income. What I gather is that Everett Housing Authority is going to try to reach the middle of that, and areas that are not being served well by the private market today because of whether it's interest rates or construction costs or other financial reasons, or just a supply shortage, but not as much the direct subsidized and deeply affordable function that the rest of the portfolio provides. So what that says to me, and I'm not sure that this is right because I'm trying to channel EHA here, is that the rents will be below median but not much, that they are not going to look for as much as the market can bear, but they need to cover costs, and if there is a surplus, that could be used to cross-subsidize other units within the same development or a different development. Our vacancy rate is pretty low in Everett, and for the most part, units that come online get absorbed pretty quick, and there's excess demand all over the place. At least that's what the housing policy experts tell us. We have such a shortfall that we need to build 19 park districts within the next 20 years, one of these every year, just to keep up with existing needs and population growth and other things like declining household size, which is leading us to need more housing for even the same amount of people. So the expectation is that the housing at that price point would be in demand and would be able to cover costs. It would be difficult to revert to a deeply subsidized or affordable housing. I think they have, because of the financing mechanism. If they were, it would actually be much, much easier. All of this would be much, much easier if it were income qualified and subsidized, because we have fee waivers, impact fee waivers, system development charge waivers, all sorts of incentive programs that could make this a lot cheaper. What I understand is that they have or perceive to have made a commitment to the neighborhood and the city to not concentrate affordable housing in that location, and so it is their intent and policy to avoid doing that. I think they would had they not made those kind of commitments, but that's something that the Housing Authority feels very strong about, like non-negotiably, at least.
Great. Thanks for letting me go to bat first.
Do you have anything right now with your mic on?
There we go. Yeah, a couple of things. One of them, and some of these things, I think they were things I plan on finding out about between now and the time this comes to us more officially. So if the answer is we need to look at this, or I should look at this, or you need time on that, feel free. One of the things was that this project as a nonprofit will not be paying regular property taxes. I want to understand, because now a week from today, we're beginning our briefings on the various revenue options to try to get the city's budget in balance for the future. And so taxes are a big part of that. So I want to get a sense of what, it looks like this, both the market rate and the subsidized would not be paying property taxes. I want a sense of that compared to what it would be with our current multifamily tax exemption in terms of both magnitude and then the time, because I think the multifamily tax exemption is limited in time. This would be perpetual. So that's what I'm trying to get a sense of
Yeah.
in terms for budget things.
Yes, all the land that Everett Housing Authority owns, I believe, as a class is exempt from property tax, just based on state law. So as a baseline, they would not pay property tax.
And by that you mean state property taxes, the taxes for the school levies, the EMT tax,
Yep,
all that?
transit, I believe, is in there too. Yes,
Okay,
I believe they're fully exempt.
And maybe the port too.
Yes, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Government agencies, non-profits provide, I went through the list of exemptions yesterday. I won't remember them all, but certain nonprofits providing services to the community, not necessarily other housing, affordable housing providers, but shelters and I think like a nonprofit medical provider, those types of things. Have that tax exemption. The mayor has asked staff to put into the development agreement provisions that would require the housing authority to provide some sort of support for the services that the residents of the development would need. Police, fire, other basic government services.
Is
That's
that
something,
kind of a payment in lieu of taxes
correct, yes.
or a pilot?
Yeah, there is a provision, and actually at Baker Heights, there was an agreement for, it was a pretty nominal amount, as I understand it. It was decades ago, but for a time, the housing authority paid a payment in lieu of taxes to the city. I believe that was passed through HUD funding, would have been the source for that.
Also, because this is a development agreement, the development agreement statute allows us to include in the agreement various payments. So this is something that we're working through internally with staff, and we'll have more to talk about later, but there may be a mechanism other than a pilot to make sure the city receives adequate money to provide the services for that area.
So however you characterize it, it would be an ongoing payment that would act like the city's portion of the property tax or some portion of that. EHA is not thrilled with that, so it's something that we're discussing with them.
And then one other general question that I need to drill down on, to what degree does the city backstop EHA? If EHA cannot make this work, I mean, conditions change, and so plans, I'm more fond of scenario planning than predicting the future, because one of them works and the other just doesn't. Can you give a sense, or will we get a better sense of what degree of the city, what we are committing to?
Yeah, I think if we were to sign the development agreement and something went wrong and EHA was unable to complete, let's say they finished phase 1 and were unable to complete phases 2 through 4, my read of it is that it would stay in its interim state, which would essentially be an undeveloped. We would expect the demolition and the kind of flattening of the site to occur first before any construction on it. So I think whatever portions, and this would be the case between phase 1 and phase 4, that I don't know that there would be ongoing liability for the city or any part of the project that we would need to pick up. I think if it goes, completely drastically, that's, EHA could sell the portion of the property. That's another thing that we're looking very closely at, is how to potentially restrict or not such a sale or a transfer of the entitlements and the land to a developer. I think we have developed this in a way that gives little to no particular favor to EHA compared to what we would for a regular developer. I've never had the lens of this in a sale mechanism, but we've been doing that for the last couple of weeks just to provide that out, and so far have not found a particular problem with that. So that would be another exit strategy, is that they could sell. At this point, I think I've heard somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 million worth of infrastructure and street improvements that they would be plowing into this. Not the kind of thing that a private developer with the capital markets, the way they are right now, would be able to do. So I think it really needs a public agency to get this started, but potentially the second half, once you've got that catalyst in place, would be more viable on its own.
And this is a staged thing they expect over about a decade
Correct.
to build.
Correct. That seems aggressive to me, but that's what EHA has said. And all of that about contingency plans, I guess just, we're not expecting that to happen. We're thinking through it, but EHA feels pretty confident that they'll be able to pull this off as proposed.
Do you know, and I'll probably be able to get this information from Mr. Morrow, are there like a right of first refusal type of thing happening where I know everybody's been displaced, replaced, relocated, and it's going to be years? And I know that when I went to the Casino Road Forum, and LISC was LASC, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's LASC. We're trying to utilize getting, the community that is there to be able to stay there or come back there. Do you know, and I know this isn't your place, but if you're channeling Jason really well, then do you know anything about that? And if everybody's just already up and gone, or if they might have a chance to come back?
Yeah, I will ask Jason. I suspect that it's the last one, that everybody is up and gone. With this many units coming online over time, and this was phased, so it'll be a couple hundred this year, and then a couple more years, a couple hundred more. There would seem to be ample opportunity for anyone who would want to come back. I don't know that it would be subsidized like it used to be, but if they're able to rent it, I'm sure they would be welcomed back.
It'll be good to check with Jason. I think I've heard them talk about the folks that had vouchers that used to be in space on Baker Heights, and that that they could reach back out to those same individuals. So, yeah, I think there might be something
Yeah,
to it.
I'll definitely
Yeah.
check.
Just a thought, because I don't think that people in general have been using that as a priority in this market, maybe ever.
Right. Yeah, and we did talk about it for Casino Road. This is a long span from closing Baker Heights to opening.
Yeah.
Still in the future, in the foggy future. So I think with more on the private development side, you expect a gap of like a year or something, or even less. Or there's the version that is a tenant opportunity to purchase, which would be
Yeah.
prior to the sale. Then you could get everybody together to.
Let's do let's see, time. We have, how are you feeling about questions, colleagues? Are you good, or do you need another?
I guess one more.
Sure.
My recollection is rusty, and this might be more for David than you, York. As we look at this, consider this, is this a quasi judicial situation we're in for the council, or is this?
No.
No, okay, so we don't have to worry, we can talk
Development
to,
agreement is something that is ultimately approved if you approve it by ordinance.
Oh, sorry, your mic.
No, it's a legislative
okay.
decision.
So we'll be able to talk to people, and we'll be able to talk
Correct.
to us after, okay, thanks.
Questions?
Streetscape and bikes, it's 5:33. I suppose we should be done with this at this time. But I know that we'll want to talk a lot about off-site enhancements, because I know that that's a big part of it, but it's not necessarily the park district. And we will look forward to getting a full briefing
March
in
27th.
Yeah, March 27th. So thank you, York. Are you here for Everett Mallway streetscape discussion? Doesn't seem like it would be
Don't have too much to offer,
you.
but I'll hang out. I will take the opportunity to make a plug for the transportation element. So again, you'll get briefings on that. I think the Transportation Advisory Committee got their first briefing 2 weeks ago or so. And we're working hard on that, and that's, again, the place to set and update our policies around things like this. So that's about as much as I can contribute to that discussion is let's keep that in mind for the transportation element.
Very good.
Yeah, I was just gonna flag that when I'm looking at that earlier on today. I'm looking forward to really serious consideration of how we handle what we want there, because it's easy to be looking in one direction, not realizing other constraints we have. And I look at Everett Mall Way, and I think it's busy commercial. It's 5 lanes plus turn. It's really busy commercial. It's really busy commute-wise as well. The speeds are pretty high. There's been some discussion of things like maybe right turn lanes and transit lanes for the outer lanes. So there are possibilities there. But I guess also, to whatever degree, I'm thinking if I was biking in that vicinity and I wanted to go east-west, I wouldn't do it on Everett Mall Way. I'd probably use the Interurban Trail on 100th Street Southeast, just south of there, an area that could use some activation. But I guess I'm anticipating considering that kind of stuff or bringing it up, because I feel like sometimes when we have these major arterials, they're big, fast things. They're always going to be big, fast things because our city needs them to be big, fast things, and nothing fundamentally changes that, not even the light rail. And so I hope we are always considering wider options like that, because I'd like to see people have transit or bike alternatives or car alternatives, but I don't want to do it in such a way that we're just dooming ourselves to failure.
I just had an idea for this Everett Mall Way streetscape discussion. Like, okay, so in previous discussions, people have stated that if we had a bus-only lane, it's not really necessary for reasons that I can't recall at this very moment, but they seemed like good reasons. But it's still a very wide area. It's so easy that you can even make a U-turn from the suicide lane, to turn around when nobody's coming, in an SUV. And my thought was, let's spend a lot of money. No, that wasn't the thought. To make the sidewalks much, much larger. We don't necessarily need the space to stay there for vehicles, but so I was walking to the bus stop today, and in short heels, even though I like barefoot, I wear short heels sometimes. And when when I'm walking on the sidewalk, it's incredibly annoying as an able-bodied person, because there's cutouts, for all of the cars. So I may as well just walk in the bike lane, which I do, and people haven't honked at me yet. They will, I'm sure. But because it's more of a straightaway. And so when we also did the Madison bike stuff with all the green, if you're on a bike and you actually want to get to somewhere, that does not get you anywhere unless you're going from like way over here to way over there. But if you want to get to any of the businesses along Evergreen Way, you're not gonna get there from, it's not Fulton. Fleming, thank you. So, I guess my point is to be able to make it accessible to many more people and utilize the streetscape would be to lessen, not have as many lanes somehow and make it safe for people not in cars. Yeah, so, because
This is what we'll have to resolve, because for me, I'd ride Fleming and then take a little jaunt sideways to whatever on Evergreen Way, because Evergreen Way scares me, but
exactly, it's very, very scary.
Fleming doesn't.
But how do you get from Fleming to make that jaunt over to the
Any
White
cross-
Buffalo is
I guess I would go to any
easy.
cross street, to the nearest cross street. The nearest cross street.
sorry.
Ride Fleming to the cross street and then go.
Or you use sidewalks, so like a 15-foot shared use path, so like bikes can go on that.
That's
and-
what,
Well, and-
yeah.
and-
And
yes,
it's way better if it's not like a bike ride that's like a curb cutout.
Uh-huh, yes.
Well, and widening sidewalks, I've seen the difference between the 5 foot or so standard and 8 makes sometimes a very big difference, especially if it's gonna be people walking abreast, facing each other, or if you want a bicycle to be in that, and with the, I had one other question too when you're done.
Oh, keep this discussion.
There was one other question. They mentioned the Safe Streets for All grant, and I'm only slightly familiar with those. Is there are commitments, I imagine, involved in that, principles that we want to hew to, but I'm not sure what those are. I guess that's probably best for me to just simply look it up.
I should be able to answer those questions, but I can't right now.
Well, good future discussion then for this.
But
group.
there's absolutely lots to talk about that,
And the thing I'm thinking about is if we're going to do some of these things and look for Safe Streets for All grants, then we should understand going in what those principles are so we don't proceed somewhere and get boxed in because we can't do what we want to do with the grant that way.
right?
I'm guessing Ryan Sass has a fair bit of expertise in that.
Corey
area.
Hurt too,
Yeah, exactly.
Corey.
yeah.
Yeah, they gave a briefing on the Safe Streets for All grant that we have, that we are implementing. It's a grant that provides the planning funds, basically, to come up with the plan to then build from. Although we've got bike master plan, we've got pedestrian plans, this one is a little
the
bit different.
Tip.
And the tip, yeah. And they
Yeah,
all-
well, I would like to understand more more context as we get to that, because I'm afraid a lot of that, I remember some of those briefings that they happened. I don't remember the specifics.
Exactly.
I want to echo Councilmember Zarlingo's thought about maybe, I think you're kind of imitating Fleming solution like we did on Evergreen Way. And I know at least some of 100th, an undeveloped right-of-way south of Fulton's Crossing, et cetera. I'm not sure if it's our right-of-way, the county's right-of-way, or half and half. It's right on the city limits. But I think there's some potential there that would be much more user-friendly, at least for non-motorized or non-pedestrian transport, their bicycles, et cetera. And then one question I had, and I'm not sure if anybody here can answer it, but I grew up in that area. I grew up when it was Diagonal Way, when it was a state highway. Do we know if the status is right now in terms
Which-
of? Evermall Way was Diagonal Way. It was before it became Evermall Way. It was a state highway. I'm not sure if it still is or not.
It
It's
still is
still a
under
state
the
highway.
purview of the
So-
DOT.
So I'm wondering, I'm not expecting an answer, but how does that constrain our ability to plan for Evermall Way?
I can tell you that when we lowered the speed limits, there was plenty of discussion between Corey
Right.
and the DOT, whoever's in charge over there with that street. So I imagine there's just a lot of discussion. So I imagine it just takes longer, but it seems like they might be open. I don't know, but it's definitely discussion. That's as much as I know.
That's the piece of information I was looking for, that there is another discussion partner there. so-
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
Thanks.
Well, and that does lead to some degree to a question I was going to raise, or an issue I was going to raise with respect to the electric bikes and scooter policy discussions, because really two things. One of them is these wider sidewalks will be used some by people in a variety of electric motorized other things, from one-wheels to scooters to electric bicycles, and the technology in that is moving fairly fast. And it would be nice if, to some degree, they could be used in a way that's compatible with pedestrians that way, give people who aren't up to fully own-powered bicycling or walking, give them some non-traffic lane kinds of options. So I think that's how these two things really sort of interact with each other. And then the other thing is just catching up with technology, because a lot of those devices are getting to where they are compatible in acceleration and city speeds with cars, whether they're bikes or the very fast scooters, or I don't think the one-wheels are there yet. But we are behind on that. This is maybe a chance to unify those things a little bit, because they really do relate.
I was just in DC, and you'll hear more about it, but, and I was walking around, and I remember the first time I went to DC for National League of Cities, I went with Paul Roberts, former council member, and the Lime scooters were pretty new, and we were talking about sidewalks and parking spaces for the Lime scooters and all of those things, and wondering, and it was so new, and it was pre-pandemic, so like 2019, and I just was there this week, and I was like, things are looking just fine. There's some Lime scooters, people are using them, they're not like draped all over the sidewalks, sometimes they're in the sidewalk, it's just grown in this organic way, I suppose is how you say it. It's not a problem. It doesn't appear to be a problem.
Did you use any of them?
No, I don't.
I
just don't.
I used one the last time I think it was last year. It doesn't really matter in the recent past, but they do not allow them on the mall in certain areas. And the version that I was on, because they have like 3 or 4 vendors, it emits like a really loud sound that says like, you are not supposed to ride this scooter here. Please leave this area. It's, it really motivates you to get off of wherever it is you were thinking you could go and take a different route. But I mean, that speaks to probably their, policy desire to keep that space not, dangerous or crowded, kind of to what you were saying, Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was
Which means
struck
there's
by it.
technology.
Yeah, yeah.
And we know too, from birds or whatever, that they can make the scooters stop and not work whatever the term is.
That might have been what was going to happen next to me, but I just left. I just did a little U-turn and got on a different sidewalk that I was supposed to be on.
Shall get off.
From my perspective, I'm just thinking in terms of policy, I think we may have more success and more effectiveness if we integrate some of these things, if we look at both our sidewalk and streetscape changes in a way that aligns with what's happening with technology, because I think we've kind of reached a point now where we can see where that technology is going to go. 5 years ago, I don't think you'd have expected the speeds or ranges or the practicality of it, but I'm starting to see that people riding some of the more robust electric scooters and electric bicycles as commute vehicles.
Yeah.
So I guess from that standpoint, from our committee and from our looks at this in the future, maybe it would be good to have a time with Corey to see where that kind of stuff is going, and then integrate that with the Transportation Advisory Committee and the Bicycle Master Plan.
Like we're not siloing.
Right.
It's a big pool with water. Okay, yeah.
I know we've kind of walked from 2 to 3, agenda items 2 to 3, but I had a discussion point about 2 first, and then I wanted to ask a question about if we have. So maybe actually more a question on Evermolly streetscape. One thing that I think has bedeviled me about the safety there, the challenges are the lack of connections between parking lots on either side. And I'm wondering to what extent, I'm not expecting an answer right now, but I think it's a good question. To what extent can the city require, encourage, incentivize property owners there to make a few logical connections between their parking lots so people aren't forced out onto Evermall Way just to go down half a block versus, and I think obviously that creates a more dangerous traffic environment, whether you're a driver, a pedestrian, or what have you. So anyway, I would be interested to find that out.
Where's an example of what you're talking about?
I think the Trader Joe's lot, the former Trader Joe's lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So connecting to neighboring property developers, I think there's some logical connections. Anyway, could have
Well,
been.
and even like kind of behind like the mall and then sort of more Best Buy and the other bigger box stores, like you can get kind of behind them and make your way like towards Applebee's, but there's one connection that's not there.
Correct.
But if there was, it's like nice, quiet. There's a good example of where it kind of works. It's probably one property owner, but on 100, outside of the city on 128th Street, like near Mariner High School, there, the
Safeway
Mariner
place?
side, on the other side of the street from Safeway, it's like a bunch of,
where
like a
like
little strip
A&W
mall, there's a
and-
gas station, there's like,
yeah.
was a
Oh.
Pizza Hut. But you can totally go the back side of all of them.
Right.
On a bike if you wanted, or a car, like, and then you don't have to ride on 128th Street, because you have.
But if cars also go, then it becomes this,
Well, but if it's parking lot speeds, sometimes that interaction and that shared use is, can be safer that way. But that's a good one. I know I've talked with economic development folks about that too here, about that. Anyway, so that's a good one. I noted it.
Appreciate
for-
that. Yeah, okay.
And I guess as I understand it, that from your two perspective, that's the kind of thing that can be handled as part of an agreement for a permit or a development or a change. It isn't the kind of thing that's usually originated outside of that.
Right, I think it would have to be voluntary to, maybe there's some incentive that we could provide to bring those barriers down a little bit. Even with new development, it was a very disappointing to me outcome with a project. There's some townhouses just north of the Target there that straddled the entire width from 3rd to 7th. And this discussion about parallel routes or on Everett Mallway would sure be more helpful if there were more parallel routes. But east-west, we've got all the streams and wetlands. And where there are not streams and wetlands,
Right.
there are fences and shrubs. This was an example to make that connection right behind Target there. The developer wasn't interested, and the city was not able to compel that. I think there's some advanced work that we need to do, potentially, and it's definitely with the city attorney's office can help us with that, but some of it might involve drawing dashed lines to say, when redevelopment happens, this is a future connection or right-of-way that needs to be made. So there is, planning and development can help, but I think some advanced work is needed, and so that's something that I'll be working with my colleagues to try to advance, and we'll need council support for that too.
The issue with trying to accomplish some of this through the permit process is that legally there has to be a nexus between our requirement and impacts caused by the applicant for the permit.
Understood. I just wonder if there might be some way, even, obviously, and that only helps us when people want to redevelop as opposed to existing. So is there a way to incentivize or encourage, I don't know, if there's an angle this could be more green or something. Anyhow, and then if I can wander now into 3, if we're.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I did that
If we're
because
done
of the
with
joint between the
Yeah.
two. not-
And I guess I'm looking for more. 2 years ago, when I stepped out the council, I always took a deep breath when I saw somebody was emailing us about scooters, and it's like, oh no, it's, anyhow, so I'm just kind of curious where the public is now in terms of the acceptance, desire for that. I'm not expecting an answer tonight, but that would be an interesting piece of information for me as we discuss electric bike scooter policy. It seems like there's a lot more acceptance, or just maybe I've been gone for 2 years and haven't had to see the emails, so.
Yeah, I don't think I've
Thanks.
seen many. It is 5:51. I cannot remember if we quit at 45 after, or 50, or 55, or is it all the way up to 6?
We can go up to 6 feet.
Oh, well then.
We advertise 6, right?
The
I
only
probably
point
even
I would
said
make
it.
on that is I don't think we're getting a lot of heartburn about it. I think I see more of them used, but I also see some of them going 20-plus miles an hour in pedestrian areas, and there's an incompatibility in that with busy pedestrian areas, and that's just where the technology has changed. And so, on the one hand, I'm encouraged by it because some people are clearly commuting on these things. On the other hand, I see the technology going a lot quicker than our regulations have, and it can be tricky when we're talking about a 5-foot sidewalk. So that's where I mean by the kind of the combination of all of these factors. I think we can do better, we can make real improvements, and I think we need to be a little bit assertive in terms of speeds on these things, because that's changed quickly. We don't want to be too terribly far behind with those technologies.
Well, and there's the kind like Bird that we contract with, and then there's personal scooters. So Bird has, or any other Lime, whichever, has parameters, right? That we say, thou shalt not go faster than.
Yeah.
Is
The
that
concern is
accurate?
primarily the privately owned ones that are bigger, faster, much longer distance, no geofencing,
Like
no
all those
advisories.
big trucks that are like up to,
Whole nother,
yeah, I know,
Yes.
it's a whole nother thing, but they're huge.
I know about so e-bikes, in order to, meet various regulations, they're, basically the electric assist has to cut out when you hit 20 miles an hour. Otherwise, you are a motorcycle and you need different kind of license. I don't know the rules around scooters. I know that piece, so
20 miles an hour on a pedestrian path or a sidewalk is very fast. And they'll get to
100%,
that
yeah.
speed almost instantly. So there's a compatibility there that's edged into being a concern that I think our ordinances probably should support
Yeah.
for compatibility and public safety.
And people in better shape than me can get to 20 miles an hour on a regular old bike with no motor at all.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
yeah,
racers have toppled people over
so
on their
but,
bikes.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's more e-bikes around. That's for sure. And if
I mean, I'd like
all-
to see them,
yeah.
my point is generally that if we do this right, I think we can make that more of a positive thing.
Yeah.
Better use of the roadways and sidewalks, more commute alternatives, especially for people who don't have the strength or the endurance, as the technology gets better, and, just a win overall with problems rather than just problems.
Yeah. Foresight, thoughtfulness, plan making. There were a few things that I will just say out loud because Jennifer wrote them down. There's a motorized foot scooter chapter in our code. Maybe we want to consider changes. There are additional provisions in the code on e-bikes in parks. What does that mean?
I think they're like not allowed from what I remember when I found that referenced in the code.
Okay.
You can't have a motorized foot scooter or e-bike in any park unless there's areas designated by signs. Or if cars are allowed, like parking lots.
I think that was like a topic of trying to figure out conversations and anyways, it was like not a city thing. It was
Could be.
how do you read rules
Yeah.
and how do you get through the law? And then we went back and forth because bikes were already not supposed to be ridden on sidewalks.
But
However, yes, in the business districts. And so even Dan Ernest was surprised when I brought that up that one time. So.
Well, and I encourage us to be realistic. If we're talking about a scooter that's going 5 or 6 miles per hour, that's not a problem in a park. I've seen them do it. If the scooter is a big, fat, tired one going 20 miles an hour in the park next to the playground, that is a problem, and I've seen that too. So I think we want to be, like any good parent, you don't make rules you don't expect to be followed, or you don't make rules if you're not serious about it. But if we're not, so I guess I'd like to take a good look at that, at the range of those things. And as you said, 20 miles per hour is kind of a break point right now for the people who don't modify them.
that's also true. Yeah.
Yeah, so any more, any less, any sideways, any tangents?
We've got plenty for the future.
Well then, friends, colleagues, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I have to say anything other than this has been fantastic. Thank you, York. Thank you, everybody. And please give us all emails at council@everettwa.gov or our first name, initial, last name at everettwa.gov. And we'll see you in a month. except we will see you in a few minutes at the regular city council meeting, 6:30. Adjourned.